Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the Tier 7 Premium American Cruiser USS Anchorage for two reasons. Number one, I've heard recently that this ship is apparently bad, and I think that is not correct for reasons I'll elaborate on in a little bit. But number two, I've also seen people playing this vessel in game recently, and a lot of people are playing it pretty poorly. They're just sitting there broadside and getting dev struck, essentially. I can't tell you how many times I've seen that over the past few weeks, ever since the campaign for this ship ended. And I think there is a logical explanation for this. This ship is, of course, a reward ship for a past campaign. And the campaigns in this game, in my opinion, are really not that difficult to complete, even for somebody who maybe only picked up this game 3 to 6 months ago, let's say. You really don't have to be a long-term player to get through one of these campaigns. All you really need is enough ships of enough classes, both battleship, cruiser, destroyer, in order to complete the missions for renown. You know, the specific ones that require things like torpedo hits, fire damage, that kind of thing. You do need a little bit of a variety of ships to get through all the missions, but so long as you play the game over the course of the month, you'll probably complete the campaign. At least I do. All I really have to do is play this game. I don't even look at the renown missions. I just play enough that by the end of the month, the campaign is complete. And I suspect there are a fair number of people out there who are like that. Or at least if you're a newer player who only picked up this game a short time ago, you probably don't find it all that difficult to complete a campaign. Maybe it is a challenge for you, but it's not an insurmountable challenge that you can't overcome and that you can't succeed in, right? So, that makes campaign ships pretty easily accessible for a fairly low price. And it could be the case that inexperienced players are obtaining these campaign ships. For the people who have the Anchorage, for all we know, this could be their only Tier 7 Premium, and their first. And if that's the case, it probably means they aren't really familiar with the American cruiser playstyle, nor are they familiar with the unique quirks that differentiate the Anchorage from the typical American cruiser playstyle, and therefore they don't really know what they're doing, so they play it poorly, they get sunk. People observe this. They say, oh my God, the Anchorage sucks. Let everybody know on the forum. And it's not really that the Anchorage sucks. It's that you've got a fair number of players who are inexperienced, don't know much about the game, playing the ship and playing it poorly. So when you run into them, you're like, oh, yeah, this thing's not very good. Well, I'm here to tell you that the Anchorage is pretty good. It is a heavy cruiser in the American line. It's a premium, of course, so it is different. But for all intents and purposes, it's like a Buffalo, which is the Tier 8 American cruiser. It's got 12 203 millimeter guns. They don't have the shortest reload time, so we don't have any kind of cracked out DPM here like in Atlanta or Cleveland or something. But we do good damage with these 12 guns, both with the HE and, of course, the AP. The HE is fairly typical of heavy cruisers. It's got 32 millimeters of pen, at least, so it can do a fair amount of damage with just HE penetration, and it can start fires. But the AP is the heavy American cruiser AP with improved penetration angles, which means it is absolutely lethal versus enemy cruisers. We'll see a little bit of that later on in this battle. The thing also has a decent armor scheme relative to other cruisers. It is coated in 27 millimeter plating, which means it cannot be overmatched by 15-inch guns, and so you have a large degree of protection against any battleship with 380 millimeter guns. Add on top of that, it has sonar, so it can spot torpedoes both for itself and its teammates. And then it has the smoke screen consumable. The smoke screen deploys for nearly 2 minutes, so it offers a bit of mobile, on-demand concealment. The idea with this ship, of course, is that you find a place on the map where the enemy team is pushing in. Preferably, it's battleships and cruisers that are pushing in. You deploy the smoke screen, And of course, you need spotting from a destroyer or another teammate in order to see the ships while you're inside of the smoke screen, because of course, smoke screens work both ways. They prevent the enemy from seeing you, they prevent you from seeing the enemy unless one of your teammates is spotting the enemy. So, ideally, you find a place on the map, you stop, you deploy a smoke screen when you know you're safe, and then you begin farming the enemy ships as they push in. You farm cruisers, you farm battleships, you deploy your sonar just in case there are any destroyers lurking about, because if you watch the Mighty Jingles, who covers World of Warships on PC, then of course you know the timeless wisdom that smoke screens are torpedo magnets. Not necessarily something you need to worry too much about when you've got sonar. One thing to keep in mind, though, and something that newer players with this ship might not realize, is that while you're in your smoke screen and firing your guns, you can be spotted. Take a look at the screen here. The Anchorage has a smoke firing penalty of 6.5 kilometers, meaning if this Gneisenau that's about to come around this corner and hopefully eat a face full of these torpedoes, well, actually I don't think he is. Looks like he's slowing down. But if he comes around this corner and turns in and gets within 6.5 km of us and we fire our guns, he's going to spot us and he's going to be able to return fire. Of course, he's shooting HE, which isn't the biggest threat in the world, but because he is so close, we're going to leave the smoke screen and increase the distance. I think if we fire our guns here, we should still remain concealed, although we're not 100% sure where the enemy destroyer is. I think we know he's not really anywhere near us. He was last spotted sailing toward the border of the minimap between Bravo and Charlie. Actually, he's been picked up far past the enemy spawn, sort of between Bravo and Charlie, so nothing to worry about. We do get spotted, though, as we exit the smoke screen, either because of the Otago or perhaps the Georgia out there, or even the Tirpitz who's on our broadside. So we are in a bit of a pickle. We want to be very careful. We're pointing our stern at the Gneisenau, Georgia, and Otago, and we want to maintain an angle against this Tirpitz, who could have our broadside, but he, for whatever reason, is also shooting HE. I have to tell you guys, HE on German battleships like the Gneisenau and the Tirpitz, I wouldn't bother. It is trash, okay? It has very poor alpha damage. It might have a decent fire chance, but you're never going to be doing significant damage with the HE penetrations themselves. Better to get a good position on the map, get a flank on somebody, and then use the German AP to wreck their broadsides. Don't shoot the HE, especially at cruisers. In any case, we're retreating now because we've got the Georgia, the Gneisenau, and the Otago behind us. We've got the Tirpitz over there. We're shooting at the Tirpitz, of course, but note that we have 2 of the 3 capture circles, and our smoke screen is off cooldown. This is a fairly decent position to smoke up because we've got spotting courtesy of our teammates near us. We're in a division, of course, with some pretty good players, one in the Plymouth and one in the Low Yang. Unfortunately, our Plymouth is about to go down because he's playing Radar Plymouth, and he is a little bit caught out where we were. But this is a good place to deploy a smoke screen because we've got spotting of the Georgia, the Gneisenau, the Otago, and potentially the Tirpitz. And this is basically what the ship is all about. Deploying a smoke screen in an area where the enemy is pushing into. The enemy has taken Alpha. They would like to get into Bravo. They pushed into our spawn. They're going to go from Alpha to Bravo in our spawn. So we smoke up here right in front of where they're pushing. We can farm them with HE as they come in. If they turn and give us broadside, we can potentially switch to the AP, which is definitely something you want to do with the Anchorage against both cruisers and battleships. Take note of this Otago out here. Now, you might see that initial salvo and think, well, that's not all that great. The Otago, though, of course, is, I think, a viewer of this channel. Pretty good player. He knows what he's doing. He's slowing down. He's turning in. He's trying to angle. Georgia is getting sort of close to us, which is a little bit of a worry. We're actually going to take an AP shot at him because he's broadside, and we might be able to get some decent damage there. But keeping an eye out on the Otago, he's actually going to make a mistake now. You see how he's spotted and he's traveling next to that island with one side of his ship against it? Well, that really limits his maneuverability options. If he turns right, he turns into the island. If he turns left, he turns into the Georgia. So he's stuck broadside to us, and we're able to access that citadel for quite a bit of damage. And really, it's only 2 salvos that it takes from the Anchorage to send the Alaska back to port. Or Alaska, Otago. Whoops. Sorry, if you can't tell by the rather interesting quality of my voice today, I have a pretty nasty cold going on. In any case, we've actually made an error here. I think we should have left this smoke screen a long time ago, because now the Georgia is within 6 kilometers of us, and the Georgia is a scary vessel. I'm sure you've seen my videos on that particular ship, but it does have 18-inch guns, which can overmatch our armor scheme literally everywhere. And of course, we do have a flat booty on the Anchorage. And, well, even if we didn't have that, the shells will just penetrate the armor scheme like it doesn't exist. And if they manage to hit the citadel, we're probably toast. So we probably should have run away earlier. That's something that you want to keep in mind when you're using the smoke screen. If battleships are pushing into you like the Georgia and they get that close, probably you need to recognize that and bail out before they get within 6 kilometers of you. But, of course, if you can't, then you do want to kite away from them and angle as best you can to mitigate the damage. As long as they don't hit the citadel, you can potentially survive. And, of course, the torpedoes there come in clutch to take out the Georgia. But what do we do now? Well, we as a team do have control of almost all 3 of the objectives. We've held Bravo and Charlie for the majority of the game. We've got a destroyer in Alpha flipping that. The enemy team, though, is ahead of us on kills, and they actually have 4 battleships to our 0. It's just myself and the 2 destroyers left. But that's all we're going to need to win this game, so long as we can maintain control of a majority of the caps. Now there's 3 minutes left to go, so the onus on us is to play safe. We don't want to be taken out. We know that there's somebody in the Charlie cap flipping it. Could be a battleship, could be the destroyer, could be any of these red ships still left alive. We don't want to charge into the cap, even though we have 27mm plating and the Tirpitz can't overmatch it. We don't want to go bow into him. That's another mistake I see people making in this cruiser and a lot of other cruisers. Now, it's not always a mistake. If you can post up next to an island, say, in something like Baltimore or something, and you're covering a cap with radar, and you've got maybe a Tirpitz pushing into you, nothing can shoot at your broadside because you've got the island protecting it, might be okay to sit bow in for a while and farm a 15-inch gun battleship as they push in. But as a general rule, bow tanking in a cruiser is a mistake, regardless of your armor value, because it compromises your maneuverability, and it doesn't allow you to get all your guns, your full DPM, on target. Instead, it's a much better idea to kite. And that's what we're doing. If we kite and we angle against the Tirpitz, we should be able to mitigate the damage thanks to our 27mm plating. And while we're mitigating the damage, we should be able to perhaps get some damage in, well, potentially reset the cap if the Tashkent hadn't already flipped it. Of course, he has, so it doesn't matter now. But long as we stay angled, well, actually, here you go. See, we get overmatched there by, I think that would have been the Massachusetts or something with bigger than 15-inch guns. Had we pushed bow in there against the Tirpitz, you can see that that battleship is in the Bravo cap. Potentially, he gets our broadside instead of our stern and deletes us, which I don't think that would allow the enemy team to win. It would certainly give them more points, but both of our destroyers appear to be certified Chads. They are still alive, even though the game is over, and that is a sign of a fairly decent destroyer player. If they can stay alive and they can take objectives and be valuable to the team in the course of the 15 minutes, that is a Chad destroyer player. So I think even if we perished, we'd still win here, but we don't want to take any chances. We want to play it safe. And that is what you want to keep in mind when you're playing this cruiser. Play it safe. There's no shame in that. This thing, of course, excels when battleships are pushing into it, or when there are no battleships left around and it can hunt cruisers and blap their broadsides with the AP. And of course, pushing into this thing is a fairly dangerous prospect, not just because of the HE spam, but also because of the torpedoes. It's a very decent American heavy cruiser, so long as you play it with a little bit of caution and with a little bit of thought about where you put the ship on the map. That's true no matter what class of ship you're playing in this game. That is what your primary thought, in my opinion, should be, whether you're playing a cruiser or a battleship, or a destroyer. Where can I put my ship on the map in order to be the most effective? Once you learn how to answer that question, that's when you start to become a decent player. And if you want more tips on stuff like that, well, give this video a thumbs up, consider subscribing if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.